Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily News. I'm Nicholas Richardson. Today was the final day of the NATO summit held in Washington, D.C. The Allies are closing ranks and responding firmly to the Russian threat. The conclusions of the Washington summit primarily concern military and training support for Ukraine, but also strengthening the security of member states. Weapons production, strengthening the eastern flank, and increasing defence expenditure are the most important tasks. The security of allied countries is at stake at the 75th anniversary NATO summit in Washington, and assurances of unity against a threat from the East alone are not enough. United States President Joe Biden stressed that it is incumbent on everyone to keep rearming their armies.
This is a critical step to maintaining our security. The first time ever, every NATO nation is pledging to develop plans for defense production at home. That means, as an alliance, we'll become more innovative and competitive. And we're able to produce more critical defense equipment more quickly than we may need it. You know, we will not be surpassed, we cannot be surpassed by anyone when it comes to our readiness.
There will be even more joint manoeuvres and NATO's eastern flank will be strengthened. Full use is to be made of the potential on land and sea of the new alliance members, Sweden and Finland. There will also be spending at least 2% of GDP on armaments in member countries, because the enemy is not going to back down. Russia is the greatest and direct threat to the security of the Allies. The threats we experience are global and internally connected. These are the conclusions of the Washington summit. The unity of the alliance countries pleases neither Russia nor China.
We will increase our support for Ukraine by establishing a NATO coordination and the security assistance and training for Ukraine, and by ensuring a sustained support for the long term. Support to Ukraine is not charity, it is in our own security interest. And we will reinforce our partnerships in the Indo-Pacific to push against the growing alignment of Russia, China, Iran and North Korea.
Hence the historic support for Ukraine, political in terms of future accession to NATO, though no specifics here, and military where there are specifics. Ukrainian air defence will gain new batteries of Patriot systems with components, as well as several other short-range systems. In this regard, the decision to support Kiev was unanimous.
I've just had a very good meeting with President Zelensky where I made it absolutely clear that as far as the UK is concerned, the change of government makes no difference to the support that we will provide. We've been united on this.
The alliance's task is to stop Russian imperialism, a point stressed by President Andrzej Duda during the summit and in a special interview with TV Republica. This most important goal that NATO must achieve is, firstly, to support Ukraine, and secondly, in the long term, to prevent Russia from winning the war against Ukraine. Russian barbarism, especially against the defenseless, must be stopped.
I'm the father, I'm the president, I'm a human. Yeah, so it's so difficult. It's so difficult to lose people. It's so difficult and to lose children. And of course, you see these people, you see parents, and then when their children are dying or dead, so you want to kill Putin at this moment. And of course, all of them, all of us, we want it very much.
The Washington summit reaffirmed the value of NATO's Article 5, which states that every member state may count on the assistance of others. The dinner given by Joe Biden was a farewell to the alliance's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. He will be replaced by Mark Rutte. NATO is changing, but it remains the biggest security guarantee for all member countries. NATO's Jubilee Summit in Washington is coming to an end. The participants adopted a declaration which contains numerous indications for the enhancement of Poland's security, the updating and implementation of regional plans for the defence of NATO's eastern flank, including improved mobility capabilities, support for the Pact's forces, as well as important provisions concerning NATO's integrated air and missile defence. The question is what can go wrong and how the plans to strengthen the alliance will be affected by the issue of the negotiations in Donald Tusk's government over plans to cut defence spending, which, as we revealed on air, the new government wanted to cut by more than 57 billion zloty between 2025 and 2028. Which security guarantees for Poland and NATO's eastern flank are still among NATO's priorities.
The final declaration of the Washington summit includes a number of agreements important for the security of Poland. the largest country on NATO's eastern flank. We have a new generation of NATO defense plans that make the alliance stronger and more capable of deterring and, if necessary, defending against any potential enemy, because it is the eastern flank of the pact that is to be affected by the largest deterrence and defense plan since the Cold War.
And we now have over 500,000 forces at high readiness in the alliance. Today, we decided to adapt NATO's command structure, improve our integrated air and missile defense systems, and to go further to match our defense plans with the necessary capabilities.
We are strengthening our ability to move, support, resupply, and sustain our forces to respond to threats across the alliance, including through effective and resilient logistics and the development of mobile corridors.
The Baltic Sea is now a NATO lake with an extremely strong defense capacity. I mentioned Poland with the biggest artillery together with Finland. I mentioned the Zeitenwende that Germany has done in its defense. And if you look at the capacity of Finland on land, capacity of Sweden and in the air and sea, and the capacity of Norway in general, I don't see the direction of Putin going towards the Baltic Sea at all.
Washington also agreed to strengthen NATO's anti-aircraft and anti-missile capabilities, including those in Poland. The launch of the Aegis Ashore facility in Radzikowo, Poland, complements existing assets in Romania, Spain, and Turkey. A kind of balance is being restored. For many years, the Russian military had more military potential than European countries. And now, thanks to new arms expenditures, it is getting to the point where Europe will be more self-reliant and more capable of responding. In the findings from Washington, it was stressed that strengthening NATO is possible thanks to an increase in investment in the defense of member states. Poland, for the time being, spends more than 4% of GDP for this purpose. But as we revealed on Our Air, Donald Tusk's government plans to cut defense spending between 2025 and 2028 by more than 57 billion zloty, including issues of technical modernization of the army, funding of NATO presence in Poland. You don't see us moving forward in any particular way when it comes to the Allied presence in Poland. You don't see us moving forward somehow particularly when it comes to increasing military spending either. Perhaps that's why the current government in recent months has said little about the programs launched by the United Right to enhance the capabilities of our army, concerning the production in Poland of Korean K2 tanks, or the acquisition of Apache attack helicopters and HIMARS long-range missile launchers from the U.S., among others. We must do everything to continue defense programs, defense projects that were started under the Law and Justice government. Unfortunately, there are some doubts here. Perhaps that's also why Prime Minister Tusk, during a recent visit by German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, said that Germany takes responsibility for defending NATO's eastern flank. The summit failed to terminate the NATO-Russia Founding Act, signed in Paris almost 30 years ago, which, among other things, says, NATO and Russia do not consider themselves enemies. They are united by the common goal of overcoming the remnants of past confrontations and rivalries and strengthening mutual trust and cooperation. Russia unilaterally terminated this agreement by seizing Crimea and attacking Ukraine. Unofficially, it is said that the previous United Right government wanted to bring its termination to Washington. The goal was not achieved by the Tusk cabinet. The act that establishes NATO-Russia relations would be stated as non-existent or terminated. This is what the government failed to negotiate, while it must indeed be fought for. Because after Tusk dismissed Poland's ambassador to NATO, Tomasz Trzaskowski, shortly before the Washington summit, without consulting the Polish president, the situation became complicated. Radosław Jankiewicz, TV Republika.
In 1943, on the 11th and 12th of July, the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, UPA, launched a coordinated attack on Poles in 150 towns in Vladimir, Horokov, Kovel and Lutsk counties. The Ukrainians took advantage of the fact that people gathered in churches on Sunday the 11th of July and murdered them there. Some 50 Catholic churches were burned and demolished. Today is the 81st anniversary of those tragic events, a wound that is still not healed to this day. The 11th of July 1943, or Bloody Sunday, is the symbolic date of the Volhynian massacre. As a result of the criminal actions of Ukrainian nationalists in Volhynia and eastern Lesser Poland, some 100,000 Poles were murdered between 1943 and 1944. Neighbours brutally murdered neighbours. Neighbour Shashka Zhuk, and Daddy says to him, "Shashka, why do you want to kill me? What have I done wrong?" He says, "No, you are a good neighbour, but I have to kill you because you are a Pole." The Polish president had words for today's bloody anniversary. Andrzej Duda indicated that our relations with Ukraine must be built on truth. We Poles will always demand a dignified commemoration of the victims of this terrible massacre and strive to carry out the necessary exhumations with a sense of duty to our compatriots who perished simply because they were Poles. Undoubtedly, the struggle for the truth is extremely difficult, but only such an effort can bear good fruit and lasting fruit for present and future generations. The truth about the Ukrainian genocide in Volhynia is being cultivated thanks to the efforts of the Institute of National Remembrance. On the 12th of July, the Institute of National Remembrance will publish the second volume of the Volyn crime documents, where the victims of the Ukrainian insurgent army are meticulously recorded. In the two volumes that have appeared so far, we identify almost 30,000 names of Polish victims and dozens of places and localities that have disappeared from the face of the earth altogether. Unfortunately, in Ukraine, all the time, the leaders of the criminal OUN, UPA, including Roman Shushchevich, who is directly responsible for the murder of Poles, get away with being national heroes. According to experts, this is related to a poor knowledge of history. We have a problem with the western regions of Ukraine where there is a strong memory of the Ukrainian insurgent army, but as an anti-Soviet formation, not as an anti-Polish formation. The last 2 years of Russian aggression have clearly demonstrated that Poland and Ukraine are only able to fend off Moscow's imperialism together. That's why it's so heartening to see images like those of a few days ago, when Poles, together with Ukrainians, cleaned up a cemetery in Kisielin in Volhynia. Paweł Włoch, TV Republika. Poland's defence budget is planned at more than 118 billion zloty, or 3% of GDP, and together with the Armed Forces Support Fund, defence spending is expected to amount to nearly 159 billion zloty, or more than 4% of GDP. This is official information. Unofficially, there are already doubts about the financing of Shield East. There may be a shortage of money even for the most crucial needs, like salaries for soldiers. Will the government have enough money for our security? As Poland, we already spend more than 4% of GDP on armaments. What is worrying is the news that there may not be enough money, not only for the military programs themselves, but also for the Polish army's wages. What is going on in the Polish army? Today, I take a closer look at the situation. We receive the same information as probably everyone else, that somewhere in the Ministry of Finance there is information that defence spending will be cut. I actually had a meeting with the Minister of National Defence, Deputy Prime Minister Kosiniak-Kamysz. On the same day, we were together at the Centre for Doctrine and Training of the Polish Army, and I told him about this situation and said, "Mr. Prime Minister, what do you think about this? Are you going to agree to this?" He was surprised. He said that he had no information on this and that he would absolutely never agree to it. But there are many questions about funding specific military programs. We hear nothing about finalising an agreement with South Korea on the production of K2 tanks in Poland. We hear nothing about finalising an agreement to acquire 500 HIMARS launchers for the Polish army from the United States. Finally, we hear nothing about finalising a deal to acquire 96 Apache attack helicopters. And the most important question, will there be money for Shield East? According to the Ministry of Defence, 10 billion zloty is to be allocated for the project, with the first $500 million to be spent next year. Will it be co-financed by the European Union, as the government claims? No such decision was made at the recent summit. Today, there is no such decision, but we are working to make sure there is, and I am optimistic. I do not believe that the Eastern Shield project will ever be carried out at all. I believe it is just a propaganda and public image project. It is a project that is designed to give the current government a permanent argument to attack its predecessors for putting up an alleged, full of holes, and I quote here, fence on the border with Belarus. What is most alarming is that the morale of the Polish military may be falling even further as a result. Dominik Tarczynski posted the following message on social media. Message from military units, voluntary basic military service not getting paid. After the emotions on news groups and forums, there is total disappointment and embarrassment. No one from the Ministry of Defence authorities explains the reasons for this situation. The Ministry of Defence responded in soldier-like terms. Dear sir, we have checked. You are spreading false information. Please do not do this. However, the number of voices concerned about the state and finances of the Polish army has been growing alarmingly recently. Today, the dilemmas we face sometimes sound like this: whether to take in more soldiers faster and delay purchases, or whether to maintain this pace and come to terms with the fact that after 2027 we may have a far greater decline in interest regarding military service. And this is a serious threat to the security of all of us. Edyta Hondinska, TV Republika. That's the news. Thank you for watching. And from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.